All right, good afternoon. I see folks are still coming in, but I am excited to be here today and to get us started. Um, First, let me start by doing a quick introduction. My name is Janice Jackson. I am the Executive Director of the Ed and Society program at the Aspen Institute, and it is an honor to be here with you today. We have a very exciting agenda plan from the work that has grown out of our amazing Aspen Cross-Partisan Education Policy Network. This network brings together leaders from philanthropy, ed policy, higher ed, and nonprofits, as well as other think tanks to share ideas and to really help us prioritize how we can move the field of education forward here in the United States. We also do that across different political ideologies, which makes this a very unique and I would say important convening during this time when there are so many issues that are polarizing. But we know one issue that is unifying is the need to have high quality education for every student in this country. Student engagement emerged as a unifying priority for our cross-partisan group. The problem is clear that now is a very different time in our schools, and educators are looking for solutions to engage students in more authentic ways in order to reduce chronic absenteeism and just rising disconnection from youth in school as well as in civic life. Unlike methods in the past where we go straight to solutions, we're starting by listening to the very people who we are trying to support. So I'm super excited about some of the folks that you're going to hear from today. The cross-partisan group does a few things. At Aspen, our goal is to both inform and inspire leaders, but also to catalyze them into action. And you will hear more about that when we have our panel discussion later. We know that the pattern right now is such that adults will ask for student input, students share their perspectives, and then adults make decisions, oftentimes without really circling back to make sure we got it right. And what we aim to do is model what that looks like, what that should look like for folks in the field, so that we can reduce the amount of students that are disengaged from our school system and civic life today. And we also want to make sure that we're preserving the democracy that our country is built on. And we can't do that unless we empower the youth, because after all, they will inherit that. So today's discussion is really about a shift. We want to go from student voice to co-agency. And what that looks like is really exploring how we can move beyond tokenism, where we just kind of stand up a student, have them say something, and go back and make the decision we were going to make in the first place. We also want to hear directly from students from diverse backgrounds who have different ideas about how we approach this work, but also can really share some lessons that we should all adopt and take to heart. And then finally, we're going to hear from experts and see what are the student perspectives and emerging research in the field that can help us really get to goal around these items. So with that, I want to introduce our first speaker today. And the speaker is no stranger, I should say, to Ed and Society at the Aspen Institute. Dr. Vicki Phillips is the CEO for the National Center on Education and the Economy. And her work spans across our country, focusing on how we can help states, school districts, as well as individual schools high performing education systems that prepare students for modern work and life. Her career spans the role of teacher, superintendent, state education leader, foundation executive at the Gates Foundation, and chief education officer at the National Geographic Society, where she led the major global transformation of education initiatives. Dr. Phillips was raised on a small farm in Kentucky and the first in her family to attend college. And she brings deeply personal commitment to educational equity alongside extensive global leadership and board service and recognition to really ensure that all students have access to opportunity. It is an honor to be sharing the stage with you today. And thank you, Dr. Phillips, for taking time out of your schedule to share emerging research in the field to help frame our discussion for today. Vicki, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. My most important role over the course of my career has been as a champion of young people, and I'm really honored to be able to share the stage today with the panelists and with everybody who's joined us, and looking forward to the comments that you will put in the chat as this discussion evolves. My job is just to give us over the next few moments a little food for thought as we move into that later discussion with the folks who are the true experts, including some of our young people. The research has actually been telling us for a long time that there's a real treasure trove hidden in plain sight, and that is the power of our young people. The school improvement research for 30 years has told us that youth perceptions are one of the most reliable and valid predictors of effective teaching and learning. And they've told us how important it is to understand that what youth tell us corresponds directly to what researchers tell us is effective in promoting academic and social learning. So we've sort of known this for a long time, but kept that, as I said, hidden in plain sight. And now we seem to be painting young people in some ways unfairly with this broader brush of anxiety and anxiousness and all of those broader terms that we're using for them these days, when in fact, nothing is either one way or the other. There's always an and there. So while young people are being more open about their issues and their issues on social media, their issues in mental health, they are also leveraging those very same technologies to help solve some of the problems that we adults have had difficulty solving ourselves over the course of our history. And we forget sometimes how much the world has changed for our young people. Elementary students in school right now have never known a world where they didn't have learning constantly at their fingertips, where they couldn't see the world in pictures and communicate instantly, where they couldn't speak a command and have something happen. And the young people that are being born right now will never know a world without AI. And at the rate that AI is evolving, think about what the world of school, well, the world and learning will look like when they get ready to enter school. Despite all of these things, the challenges that young people face, the way the world has changed around them, this is one of the most resilient generations. 57% of young people around the globe right now actually see themselves as a citizen of the world first, as well as a citizen of their country. And Gen Z is on its way to being the most highly educated change makers we've seen. Not only are they graduating at higher rates and finishing college at higher rates, but they are out there engaged in these global conversations and issues and working to create change for a common good because they believe in that common good and common work. A few other things to just note about them. They have faith in the power of the collective. These are young people that actually value collective action over individual leadership and action. They are young people that tire of movements that admire problems. They are solution seekers. They want to focus on helping us find solutions and turning those solutions into direct action. They are about participation, co-creation, and passion-based learning. That's at their core in how they problem solve. So they want agency over their own learning, and they want topics they can connect with. And these young people are some of the world's most passionate and effective conservationists, particularly those age 13 to 25. And the reason that's so important for us to think about in education is that it's for three reasons. They're interested, they're willing to act, and they influence others. And we need to bring them into this world of ours in terms of designing the future of learning and work because they can demonstrate that as well. Interest, action, and influence. They also value intergenerational collaboration. They're not opposed to collaborating with adults, to working these things out together. In fact, they welcome it. They look for mentorships and other opportunities. And interestingly enough, adults benefit as well when we work closely with young people and hear their views and co-design with them. So, if we're willing to really think differently about young people right now, we can see them as allies in transformation. They act locally, they care deeply about their communities, but they also tend to interact globally, regionally, and nationally as well, and can have influence along those lines and can be some of our best allies as we seek to transform learning and transform what school looks like to meet their needs. You know, at NCE, we spend a lot of our time trying to think differently about issues, whether that's thinking differently about math or strategic staffing or time. And we're doing some research around the world right now to help people think differently about youth. We're surfacing some thought-provoking observations about how to approach youth differently. We're going to offer some interesting examples of what some pioneering systems do that's different. And we want to pose some probing questions about new ways of thinking about youth and their engagement inside policy and practice. So let me give you just a quick glimpse about how some of that might look before we turn back to Janice and our panel. So one, we have to move beyond the fundamentals, but the fundamentals are still important. We can encourage diverse entry points, whether it's students helping be on advisory councils or student board members or draft some district policy. We need to commit to authentic partnership, creating systems that involve all students and hear all voices and treating them across the generations as an important part of the process. And we can work on some common challenges together, helping figure out how to fund and do the logistics around student participation so that they can really be engaged and helping shift mindsets and readiness. But those fundamentals are the floor, not the ceiling. And when you look at what other high performing countries are doing, or countries that are forward leaning around student engagement, they are moving from programs to systems. They're no longer treating youth engagement as a one off initiative, but they're thinking about how it works across their entire systems. Sometimes they're thinking about how it works across their entire country. They're moving from representation to partnership, having students co-design, not just advise. They're moving from listening to learning, having adults and youth learn with and from each other. They're moving from local stories to global insights, grounded in community, certainly, because that's where young people want to be grounded, but also informed by global practice. And they're thinking about this not as youth work anymore, but as shared work, where there's a collective responsibility across ecosystems, and the youth and the adults in the system share in that responsibility. And then the research and the global practices we're looking at also tell us some really grounding insights that are important. First, youth leadership is most effective when it moves beyond symbolic to structural. Not just having young people in advisory spaces, but having them involved in policy, budgeting, and actual delivery of new solutions to learning. They tell us that data can be an entry point to agency, treating young people not just as respondents to surveys, but as actually co-researchers, figuring out what youth engagement can look like in a system in a really meaningful and powerful way. They tell us that ecosystems matter. Young people's lives extend far beyond school. So collaboration across sectors, education, workforce, health, arts, all of that amplifies engagement and belonging and helps address some of those challenges that we're surfacing about young people and they are surfacing themselves about their challenges and needs. And also that the adults need tools to effectively partner. If we're going to move to a new normal, from sort of the fundamentals to a new normal of deep co-agency and engagement, that means we as adults need to think differently. We need our own capacity for listening differently, for learning with young people differently, for embracing them as real partners in the process. And they tell us most of all that the future belongs to co-design, that when youth help imagine and transform systems, they learn to shape the world, to help us shape the world in new and more productive and hopeful ways. Then when we ask them just merely to inherit it. And I want to close with just one of my favorite quotes from a few years ago. A young person said to me, this has stuck with me. In fact, we put it on the wall at National Geographic when I was there, that young people are the Earth's most untapped resource for hope. They make up the majority of the world right now. And it would be unfortunate if we didn't start to harness alongside them the power that they can bring to the table and the way that they can help us design and enact solutions that can change our systems and learning for the better. Thanks. I'm so excited to join the panel discussion.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Phillips, for that wonderful presentation. So many important insights and so many reminders about how we think about young people. The biggest takeaway for me is that young people care about the world. And they also want to act locally. And so, what we have an opportunity to do today is to really catalyze that in the field. The Aspen Institute has prioritized this, which is why we created the new Center for Rising Generations, because we understand that the power of change is going to come from the next generation. And so, what a wonderful setup to our discussion today. But now I'd like to transition to the panel discussion. And I think it's fitting that we start by hearing from our student panelists who are on this call today. And so, first, let me do a quick introduction so you know who is a part of the panel. And then I'd love for them to jump in and just do kind of a little intro, let people know who you are, where you're from, what issues matter most to you, and then we'll engage in a discussion with everybody. First, we have Omari Barnes, who is a student member for Maryland State Board of Education and also National Policy Director, and also a member of the National Student Board Member Association, with some incredible insights as the only as a board member, as a voting board member. So I would love to hear more of his insights and how he is exercising that power in his role. Next, we have Emily Grace Adams, who is a student in Wynn Parish School System and also serves on their Student Advisory Council and is also a member of the Louisiana Youth Advisory Council. You'll hear much more about Emily's background. She's an incredibly busy young lady and has some exciting insights to share with us today. And then we have Dr. Adam Young, who is the superintendent of White Pine County School District in Nevada. Thank you so much, Dr. Young, for being here. I know you're a big proponent of student voice and student engagement. So we're looking forward to learning how you operationalize that in White Pine County. So, Omari, I'm going to ask you to kick us off by sharing a bit more about your background. Make sure people know who you are, where you're from, but would love to hear more about your ideas around how to authentically engage young people.
Definitely, and thank you so much for to Aspen for having me and for the introduction. Again, my name is Omari Barnes. I have the privilege of being the student member on the Maryland State Board of Education for this year. I'm actually from Prince George's County, Maryland. So that's about Central Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. And I'm from Temple Hills. I attend Crossland High School. I'm a senior at Crossland High School, which is a little bit South County, Prince George's County. It's a bit of a mid-sized school, and I was formerly the SGA president there, being involved in student government. So a lot of great history that I have with my school, and I love my school. So you asked about just the importance and ways in which we can authentically engage students. I have to first mention my role, as it is a very unique role in that it is a full voting role. So the only difference between myself and any of the other members on my board is that my name has student in front of it. But that is the only thing that delineates me from my colleagues on the board. And in my role, Maryland, which is written into Maryland state law, which just goes to show you how powerful creating those structures and systems are. The governor appoints one. So it is a gubernatorial appointment, executive appointment that is then confirmed by our state Senate. So you're confirmed by the state Senate and you can vote on the budget. all of the regulations and the policies that are passed. And so I really get to be involved in all of the conversations. And yes, your voice, you do find that your voice will weigh more in conversations because they have to consider you as someone who, at the end of the call, is going to be maybe the difference between whether or not this policy passes in the first place. So that is an incredible leverage that I have in my role that I use, and also the ability to engage other students and in this role as well.
Wow, that is remarkable, and it is rare, which is unfortunate, but hopefully conversations like this will continue to encourage people to think about what's possible. So thank you for sharing that experience. Emily, why don't you come off mute and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about all the ways you're involved in student advocacy?
Okay. Hi, my name's Emily Grace Adams. I'm from North Central Louisiana. It's called Wynn Parish. I attend Winfield Senior High School. I'm a sophomore. I'm really involved in my school. I would say about 90% of the activities I'm eligible for. I really like being involved in my school. It makes me feel just like a part, and not only my school, but my community. And some things in my school and community, they definitely like mix together and they create like a little bridge. So that's really interesting. And two ways that I like to advocate for student voice is number one, I'm a member of my superintendent's youth advisory council, and that's actually new this year. So this is the first year that we've actually had anything like this in my parish, which is really interesting. And I'm glad I'm getting to be a part of it and sharing what our students feel and think about the happenings in both our schools and our parish. And I'm also lucky enough to be a member of LIAC, which is Louisiana Legislative Youth Advisory Council. And this is also my first year on that, which is really exciting because it's kind of it's just a group of 31 members from all over our state, and we get to come together and learn about legislature in our state. And not only that, but we're actually doing our bill idea for this year right now, which is really interesting. And although sorry, I'm getting a little nervous. And this year it's actually school related. And so our bill idea is on AP testing and allowing students to if they don't have a certain AP test in their school, this bill would allow them to self-study and go to different schools to still be able to take this AP test if it was going to be beneficial for them to have in college, which is just really interesting. And I think is really important, especially coming from a parish that doesn't have any AP tests, any AP classes being offered. So yeah, I'm really excited to be
Oh,
here. Thank you so much for having me.
wow, what a great example of student agency, but also like taking advantage of opportunities for their own career advancement. I'm going to ask you to a little bit more about that in just a second, but I want to bring Dr. Young into the conversation. You heard Dr. Phillips' presentation, also the introductions here today, and you do a fair amount of work on your own around authentic student engagement. Talk to us a little bit about what's happening in White Pine and how you foster that leadership amongst your students and any other key insights you'd like to share with the group.
You bet. Thanks. It's so good to be here. And what an honor to sit alongside Amari and Emily, and of course, Dr. Phillips as well. When I look at the two young people who are on this panel, I have so much hope and optimism for for our future, and not just them, although certainly them, but the young people that exist in school districts across the country. It's just really, really special to see them finding their voices and searching for ways to push the system. So yeah, I appreciate the chance to be here today. I am the superintendent in White Pine in Nevada, which is very different, it sounds like, from where Emily and Omari both go to school. We're an extremely rural part of Nevada on the eastern side of the state with a huge mining and law enforcement community here. So just really, really interesting demographics. But I think maybe what I would add as far as systems level kind of thinking about amplifying student voice and doing that in a way that makes it intentional and not just kind of by accident. And I'll point to this graphic that's behind me here. this White Pine Portrait of a Leader was co-created through multiple years of back and forth and dialogue and all sorts of engagements and challenges from our community, but also from young people as we really wanted them to be drivers in this situation. So when it says portrait of a leader, that's not talking about superintendents or principals, although they're part of that, but it's talking about our vision in this community of empowering and growing every single young person that comes through our doors to be a leader of themselves, a leader for others, a leader in the community, a leader in whatever way that that means for them. So I think that what that looks like operationalized, and I'll just say a couple quick words about this, is that our students told us, you're doing a great job of kind of changing the way that instruction looks so that we have a stronger voice. Good job. But we want more voice in the way that we show our learning too. And I really appreciated Emily's point on this here because this is a sticking point for system leaders, is that sometimes states only define learning in a certain way. And yet that way isn't necessarily meaningful for our young people. So we've really tried to shift, along with our students leading this charge, the way that our young people show that they have become leaders, whether that's in academics or in civic engagement or whatever, so that they can find evidence in ways that is meaningful for them. They can share that evidence in kind of a portfolio model with their peers, with their teachers, their family, their community members, etc. And and then they're assessed and kind of scored on that evidence. And so the evidence gets to be very authentic and meaningful to them, and they get to show their learning. They're empowered to show their learning in a way that translates to life beyond what the school system is, and kind of amplifies some of these durable skills that we're trying to focus on.
Yeah. What a wonderful example of how to create the structures for this change. And I'm definitely going to come back to that. We do have questions in the chat, which I'm going to pivot to because I think they connect directly with a few things that have been lifted up already. And then I'll go back to some of the pre-planned questions that I have. Emily, we have one for you. Someone wants to know, it's anonymous, so I'm sorry I don't have your name. What kind of reception or pushback are you getting on the bill related to AP? Can you talk about how that experience has helped to shape you civically?
Okay, so actually sorry. So we were chosen to be on LIAC in May, and we had our first in-person meeting in July. But actually, the first about like 5 months of our being on LIAC, we were actually just discussing bill ideas because you want to make sure that number one, our bill isn't just going to be pushed down by the legislators that are going to be helping us get our bill passed. And so it was only at the end of December that we finalized what bill we wanted to go forward with. And I actually think it's very interesting because there's 12 different bill ideas that us as LIAC members, we all voted on them. And we were gonna get the top three and then discuss the three a little bit more and then decide. But the AP bill actually won by a landslide in our out of our LIAC members. So that's what we're doing. But one member of LIAC was really adamant that she did not think that this bill was a good idea. And I will say, like, a lot of her points had meaning behind them, and they were definitely thought out. However, after more discussion, us as LIAC whole, we decided that we still wanted to go forward with the AP one. So I definitely think it's just we're still at the beginning, so I really don't know how this is going to go in legislature, but hopefully it all works out good, and hopefully we're able to get a bill passed out of it. I'm sorry, it's still new, so
Yeah.
I really don't know what's going to happen in the future, but that's what I have to say about it.
Well, you have to keep us posted. And I just love the way you even describe the process is so real. Like everything's not going to be 1000%, support from everybody, but how do you engage? How do you listen to other sides and have that intellectual curiosity and move the process along? That's really what democracy and leadership is about. So thank you for modeling that. Omari, we're going to turn to you. We have a couple of questions in here. And then, Vicky, I want to have you come in from a research standpoint on this. But people want to know what kind of preparation is necessary for young people and adults to work together. And I want to hear both sides, Omari. I know you have to do a lot of stuff to be prepared and have advice for young people, but also what do adults have to do to really show up and do this work in an authentic way?
Yeah, definitely. This is I think that I'm fitted to answer this question because actually the president of my board was in my seat 20 years ago. The president of the Maryland State Board of Education was in my seat 20 years ago. So he has been a great support for me because of the fact that I have a 1 year term. Half of the battle is always going to be finding your footing and understanding not only what the board is doing currently, but the context for the decisions that they're making. Because we know that many of the decisions that are made in education policy are cumulative because education policy data lags. And so it takes years to get to make progress in some instances. But I would also add that we have to create systems where there is a level playing field. For example, when I was first appointed to the board, they had a board orientation in the office, which is in Baltimore City. I received the same orientation as one of the adult members who was coming onto the board. In fact, we were in the class together. So, what does that say about their commitment to ensuring that we have a level playing field and that all board members, regardless of whether or not you're a student, are valued? We can't have, for example, a student board member orientation and then an adult orientation, because even though you mean well, you are creating an implicit separation. And so we have to create systems where, yes, we are educating our adult board members and our students on boards in the same room, under the same circumstances, so that there's a shared understanding that, okay, we are on the same level. You and I are colleagues on this board and we're doing this work together. And so that's something that I would lift up.
Yep. Dr. Phillips, I'm going to ask you to come in because you shared some insights, and I know you have ideas about the systems and structures that need to be put in place. What would you add to this discussion based on your experience and what the research tells us?
Well, I think that Omari just hit on a couple of really important pieces, right? I mentioned this earlier, where it's important to make sure that the adults have the capacity and the understanding to engage students in this fuller way, as it is to set up, individual structures within which that happens. So I think that is one big issue. And then, Emily Grace said earlier when she was talking about her colleague who had a difference of opinion, that is equally important, right? That we're able to have those conversations and people can respectfully agree, respectfully disagree, where everybody's perspective is valued, and helping make sure that that playing field is kind of level set as well. I could go on, but just picking up on this conversation. And then I think White Pine exemplifies what it means to pull young people into really substantive processes and have their voices have equal weight. And all of those things kind of move you beyond these fundamentals that I was talking about earlier into more powerful engagement strategies.
Yeah. And we've been talking about, I guess, some of the highlights as it relates to student agency and engagement. But I would also love for either of you or both to just share an opportunity or a time where you felt unheard in this space, or maybe even prior to joining your official positions and capacity. If you wouldn't mind, sharing examples of what you were trying to get accomplished, what kind of resistance you were met with, or how adults showed up in that space, and what did that make you feel like? And if you don't have a personal example, maybe something that you've seen other young people experience. But this is an opportunity to make sure that adults hear what it feels like when you feel unheard. So if any either of you would like to come off mute and share an example, that'd be fantastic.
You see, you can't have two nice people on the same call. You can go, Emily.
Are you sure? You can go for-
Of
Go
course.
ahead. We have plenty of time. Emily, kick us off.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Well,
Just, I need to
just
make
tell
sure
us
I want
about.
to cover all the
Yeah,
points.
I want to make sure. Well, the biggest point is like, is there a time where you felt unheard, like your voice wasn't heard and you had to speak up or advocate in a different way? And really, what I'm trying to give you permission to, not permission to do, what I'm pushing you to do really is share where adults can do better in these spaces, so that students feel comfortable engaging authentically in these spaces.
Okay, so what I'm going to talk about, it's not really a specific example, but I definitely like have felt it over my years in high school and middle school. I think a lot of times, I mean, I'm a very involved person at my school and in my parish, and I think lots of times adults will come and ask for my opinion on things, and if the adult comes to me and I try to give them my opinion, and I definitely think about everything I say, I don't just give it like I definitely think about it and make sure everything I'm saying I truthfully believe and I think has meaning. And I think if they just listen and then just brush it off as though they never even asked for my opinion, I definitely think adults could do better on that. And just like even if what I'm doing cannot be done, like I don't know, like it's just not a good idea for right now, or it's just not what the district school classroom's looking for, just saying that my voice was heard and giving me like some examples and reasons of, oh, like this is a good idea, but this just not good for right now because of, I think just like showing students that although not everything can be accommodated for, it's still heard and their voices have meaning.
Yeah, excellent point. Thank you. Omari, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, my board president was actually in my seat, and so it's very difficult to actually find a scenario in which I felt marginalized because my board is so incredibly supportive, and I'm around a supportive community, including today, you guys, constantly and consistently. But what I would add is that because of how wacky and unique my position is, there are some small misinterpretations of my role that are some of my pet peeves about my role. Like for example, I always tell people when I correct people because many people think that I'm a student representative. But I always tell people, no, I am the student member on the board. It's written into state law. And in Maryland, there's also a parent member on the board and a teacher member on the board. And so I always have to remind people, no, I am a member of the board. I am, yes, but de facto, I am someone who brings the unique perspective of a student to the board, but I'm a member and I exercise my independent judgment when I am making decisions, backed by my youth perspective.
I love that. See, that's what we
Me
want
too.
people to hear. So please lift it up and remind them of your title and your power. Quite frankly, lean into that. So I love hearing that story. Adam and Vicky, I'm going to turn to you. We're getting several questions in the chat, so I want to make sure we get to them. The question is, people are curious about what your experiences were like when you were in high school. And did you feel like you were taken seriously in decision-making processes back then? Either way, how has that shaped how you approach this work today? I think that's an interesting question.
Go ahead, Adam.
Sure. Well, my interesting context is that I live and work in the same community where I was raised. I went to high school in White Pine, so did my father's family and all of my younger siblings and my own children. So I probably operate um, from a very unique perspective there. Um, which in some ways is beautiful and in some ways is very, very challenging. But yeah, you know, I don't know if I really wanted my voice. Well, I kind of wanted to fly under the radar, honestly, as a high school student. And sometimes I wonder, and I'm interested in what Emily and Omari have to say about this, and Vicky, you too, because one thing that we have found as we've worked on our leadership collective vision in White Pine is that leadership does look different for a lot of people, and that's okay. You know, some students, some adults don't define leadership as being out in front and being someone who is very vocal and kind of participatory in the way that these two young people are right now. For some people it looks a little bit different like that than that, and I was probably one of those young people when I was that age. I wanted to play sports and I wanted to, have a little bit of fun, but I didn't necessarily want to change the world, you know? And so I think part of what we grapple with our young people now is, okay, if we have this strong vision of leadership, let's define what that means for you as an individual, and then let's chart the course to try to help you accomplish those goals rather than again trying to fit a one size for all. In this case, it's just a different size than the old model, right? So I think that's part of what we're trying to look at is how to personalize things and embrace this concept of leadership and be comfortable with the difficulty and the messiness that leadership is going to look a little bit different for one student than it does for the next versus one adult to the next. So,
Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing that.
mine was shaped by, I guess, two kind of sides of the same coin, if you will, experiences. One, I grew up in a really impoverished community, and the multiple elementary schools that fed into a big high school. And when I got to high school, when I told my the adults in the school what elementary school I went to, they decided it signaled poverty, and my voice didn't need to be heard after that, not on anything. So it really shut me down in that regard. But later in school, when I wasn't really planning to go to college, it was a peer who really pushed me to go, wouldn't accept the inequities between us. She was from the more affluent end of the county. She pushed the adults in the school to do things for me that got me on that college trajectory. And I think that's when I decided how important adult and young people's voices were and how powerful they were in your life, and sort of said to myself, I want always to be on the side of young people because I know what a young person can do when they set their mind to getting the change they want, like this peer did for me. She literally changed my life and trajectory. And so that made me just a champion of young people's voice from then on.
Yeah. I love that question. It gave us all an opportunity to kind of think back on our leadership journey and when did we decide to speak up and what were the conditions that allow for that or made it difficult. Which brings me to another question we have in the chat for Emily and Omari. The question is, what are some of the issues that education leaders are missing or not paying enough attention to as you see it? So this is the time to really inform us, but like what are we missing? What should we be talking more about based on what you think young people are experiencing?
You wanna go first, or Maury?
Oh, thank you very much, Emily. I would say, um, first, I would consider in the context, since we're discussing how we can shift our language, right? From just student voice to co-agency, I would consider Emily and I a part of that education leaders group. Um, and so I know for me, in my role as a board member, there are many things that we're currently working on, including just this nation is having a literacy problem and a mathematics proficiency problem. So we're focusing on that. We just introduced two new standards for that. I also think that artificial intelligence and cell phone use is going to become just increasingly, it's already debated, being fiercely debated. And I know that in the state of Maryland, there are bills in the legislature, because we're in session for 90 days now, that would implement a broad ban on personal devices. And there's a distinction between personal devices and cell phones. Many of the students in districts in my state rely on personal devices because the school issued devices they received during the pandemic are in a state of disrepair, and it may cost hundreds of dollars that the school system may charge them for them to receive a replacement. So just being mindful of that, being mindful of ensuring that students are not only at the table, but they're helping their decision makers at the table will be really, really important. But those are the sort of the few of the things I've been working on as a board member.
Yeah. Thank you for lifting up technology. We're going to come back to that. And I want to hear from Dr. Young how you're tackling that as well. Emily, would you like to add anything? I mean, you're in these spaces, in both spaces. What are adults missing if you wanted to add anything to what Omari said?
Okay. So as someone that like comes from like not only a rural school, but like a rural district and parish, our parish does not have a lot of money. Our economy is just not doing that great right now. So this is really affecting our school system because just there's a lack of teachers, there's a lack of
Hmm.
things we can really do in our school. As I said earlier, we don't have any APs, we don't have any honors classes. We have pretty much just the basic classes you can have that you need to have to graduate. And
Yeah.
so I think that obviously this isn't an issue in all places. Like my cousin, she goes to a school, it's a magnet school and it's in Shreveport, so it's a lot bigger of a town and city. And so she has all of these opportunities. And I think that some people are missing that not all of these places have all these opportunities. And that if I have English and then I have geometry and it's very like small scale. Obviously, you need these things to graduate, but like there aren't levels to this, I guess is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
on what Omari said about AI and technology, Louisiana actually has a law put in place and phones are banned at schools. So we can't have any electronics. Phones were issued a school Chromebook. And so that's what we use. And so AI really isn't a problem at our school
Hmm.
because it's banned on all of our Chromebooks. We can't access it, and we also don't have access to our phones. So I think that's not really an issue for us. I think it's just lack of resources is a big thing for us and just
Hmm.
not having the opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Young, would you like to add anything? I was going to shift gears, but I want to give you an opportunity because I'm pretty sure things are bubbling up for you.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Janice. I think I'll defer those comments maybe until later, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay.
And in the spirit of giving lots of time to continue this discussion, and if there's a little bit of time, maybe I'll circle back.
Okay, sounds good. Because there is one question in here that's more direct to you, Emily and Omari, around issues that students face. So I'm going to read it and would love for you to weigh in. One of our attendees is asking, do you feel like our education system in its focus on achievement and testing has any connection to rising levels of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicide amongst young people? Do you see any connection between like those high expectations and how it's affecting young people's mental health?
I'll go first on this one if that's okay. I
Mhm.
definitely do think I see a connection. I am like I'm a good test taker. For Louisiana, it's leap testing, and for me, these aren't something I like necessarily struggle with. Sorry, not to brag. I just don't really struggle with them. However, if someone does struggle with them, these tests basically make or break your year. They're a really big part of our grade system in Wynn Parish. So if someone isn't a good test taker and they aren't performing well on these initiatives on these tests, their levels rise. I know, like, in my life, one of my best friends isn't a good test taker, and she like has really bad anxiety in general. And so whenever these tests coming up, her stress levels are so high because she's just so worried about what's going to be on the test, if she's learned everything, if she's prepared, and just overall like what the outcome's going to be. And so I definitely see a connection to all these things. And I definitely think it's something that educators should worry about. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Omari, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, definitely. I would just very briefly, I know that we likely have more interesting questions as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, just add two things. First, yes, I am concerned about, in fact, one of my predecessors, actually, one of her focuses was standardized testing, and she was able to effectively push the board to implement some sort of reduction in the frequency of them. But for me, I'm concerned about how we are diagnosing and our students with special needs and our
Hmm.
neurodivergent students,
Yeah,
because they tend to be the ones who are stuck at the bottom
yeah,
of the ladder when we administer traditional standardized testing. So ensuring those systems are strong is going to be
yeah.
really important. That we have alternative pathways for those students is going to be very important. And I think this question is specifically relevant for Maryland, because actually what we're doing in Maryland is revising our star rating system for schools.
Okay.
Because our system is so test heavy, they want to focus more on recognizing student achievement when we rank
Hmm.
schools. And so they're implementing basically, or they're trying to implement it now. They're going to the legislature to try to
Hmm.
implement, give them the flexibility to implement without doing a legislative mandate, where a significant portion of the rating will come from the improvement that they see for the bottom 25% of students in the class. And so that's another unique way to, instead of tests being something that are anxiety inducing, ways we can recognize schools and by extension students for their improvement.
Hmm.
Recognizing that improvement is going to be really important, um, because at the end of the day, life is about taking one step at a time, and you may not be at full proficiency yet, but it's not the end of the world. And
Yeah,
we want to ensure that we instill that in our students, and that's something I see just as a peer of the student, just as a peer and another student. They want that
yeah,
recognition.
yeah. Totally. Couple of questions around the same topic, I think, for Dr. Young and Dr. Phillips. It's asking, how do we go? We've talked a lot about engaging students authentically, and a lot has focused on some of the structures that we have in place, whether it is student governance, et cetera. We also know that surveys are oftentimes used to solicit student input. Beyond these structures that we've already covered today, what else out there in the field do have you seen that is effective that you would share with folks listening on here, especially for the superintendents, principals, and other educators listening in today?
I,
Thank
I,
you.
mhm.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll lead us off. Um, Definitely, I would just like to I know that Emily mentioned that they have a youth advisor, a legislative youth advisory council. We have the same thing in the state with MIAC. So it's actually funny because it's just a similar acronym. And so that's going to be really important. Opportunities for young people to engage in the education policy side of it, the legislative side of it as well, civic engagement and literacy. Creating systems where we're not punishing young people for being involved. I know that there's a bill going through the Maryland House of Delegates at the moment that would provide for an excused absence for students that are engaged, that are doing activities that are civically engaging. That would include coming to testify at a local board of education or state board of education meeting, for example. Um, and providing, if you do have a first, yes, a student board member is an incredible way to have students at the table. But if you do have one, ensuring that you're also setting up the infrastructure to support that student. Recently, I went to a school visit with a local student board member because many of the counties in Maryland also have local students on their school boards, and then they have me on the state level. And it was really interesting because he actually had someone from the board office there to accompany him and to provide sort of as his scheduler and chief of staff. And so that body person, so that was pretty interesting because I didn't even have that. So I was a
So
little
did
bit
you go
jealous.
back and ask for more resources as a
Yeah,
result?
definitely, yes. And so ensuring that there's the infrastructure there to support them. And I know that many student members love to establish youth advisory councils, but you can also establish, Emily is a great example, superintendent's youth advisory council, or help that student board member to outreach that advisory council or allow them to even be the chair of your advisory council. So there are multiple ways that you can involve students.
We got a lot of questions in the chat, but I want to give Dr. Young or Dr. Phillips an opportunity if you want to weigh in on this.
We'd love to share a quick example here, if that's okay with you. Uh,
Please.
yeah, so I mean, there's so many things that come to mind, but as schools, and as school leaders, we're always still focused on learning and on trying to create experiences for students that will deepen their not only their durable skills functioning, but their content knowledge as well. So I just wanted to briefly share an advocacy kind of cross-curricular activity that some of our students here in White Pine engaged in uh, just about a year ago. So we have some very old school facilities here in rural Nevada, and uh, without the local capacity to bond in order to replace those. So, for example, I have half of the students in my district who attend schools that were built before World War One, and so they have a few structural flaws, right? And we've been engaged in a process for a number of years at the legislative level to try to secure funding at a state as a state priority to replace some of these schools. So about this time last year, as our legislative session was getting going, our students, and this is the second session that they've done this, came together and helped us as instructional staff plan a kind of a cross-curricular advocacy assignment that involved math, science, social studies, writing, technology, AI, all of these things. And then they created some of the structures to determine which of those submissions were the most compelling. And then I asked my board to support those most compelling uh, pieces of persuasion to travel to the state legislature in Carson City, which is about a 6-hour bus ride, to sit down in front of the legislators to share this evidence, to provide testimony. So, this is the young people that are doing this about how this environment isn't the best environment for learning. And that if we're looking at equity and high levels of achievement, then we need to be concerned about our rural school districts and the rural facilities in the state of Nevada. It was beautiful, beautiful. One of the highlights of my career as an educator. And we had students who did that. They were very compelling. They testified in front of the Assembly Government Affairs Committee. Long story short, about 65, 70 days later, the state legislature passed a $100 million bond to fund the replacement of these schools, two schools in my school district, because in part of the work of amplifying voice and again creating authentic experiences for learning that students can be directly involved in and that aren't kind of artificial and come out of a textbook and stuff like that. So I just share that as an example that it doesn't have to like doing these types of assignments or activities is not like groundbreaking or earth shattering. People have been doing this for a really long time, but it works. And it was compelling. And so we're in celebration mode in here in White Pine as we plan for these new facilities and have $100 million thanks to in
Yeah.
part the work of these students.
I love it. And I love that we're giving them concrete examples and things they'll see really for the rest of their lives that they played a big role in. Well, I want to go because we had quite a few questions. I'm going to do a little bit of a lightning round because we got about 10 or 15 minutes left. And Omari and Emily, you're super popular. So we got a lot of personal questions for how you balance all of this. So one, would love to know how you balance the duties because you guys, I mean, remind me all the time I didn't do enough in high school. But also, how do you balance that with your academic work? I'm assuming you all have 4.0 GPAs. No, I'm just joking. But how do you keep up with your academic work, but also do all of these student leadership activities?
Okay. I'll start us off. So as I said earlier, I really like pride myself on trying to be involved in as much as I can, both in my school and outside of school. I really like being involved in things. I like filling my time. I like having stuff to do. So, for example, LIAC, those are like usually it's about two Zoom meetings a week.
Hmm.
Recently, it's been like a little bit less, but it started off as two Zoom meetings a week. I'm also a cheerleader and I'm on the first like golf team our school's ever had, which is exciting.
Yes.
Um,
Wow.
and then I'm an officer in a couple different clubs, and then I spend a lot of my time doing P-Law, so that's parliamentary procedure for FFA, and then I do a bunch of different stuff for 4-H. And so, um, in my experience, I balance my time between all these different things. I just really have to set a certain time for me to do all of my certain things. And if I stray from my time, I kind of get a little bit like off balance, I guess. And so, but I'm also not gonna lie, my school district doesn't give that much homework, or my school specifically. And I want to like give this example. LaSalle Parish, so that's a bordering parish of Wynn. They actually just like banned homework, so they don't give any homework anymore. And I found that really interesting. And we actually talked about it in LIAC because it was just like, wow, like that's different. And but I kind of see something similar might happen to Wynn Parish because we really just don't have that much homework being given. So I think that makes it easier for me to balance my time. And that's not going to be everybody, of course, but that's my experience.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Omari, how are you balancing things?
Thank you for asking. I appreciate your concern.
Hmm.
But yes, for me, this position is like a job. So you have to ensure that you budget your time. So I try to live by my calendar. If I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I try to have an hour to do everything. I budget my time in hours. So I'll do an hour here, an hour there. I think my schedule is lighter, and this also goes back to systems as well. My school, they understand the nature of the role, and so what they did was first every other day I have a half day, so I get out at 10 a.m. every other day, and then I have 2 periods of basically free period in my built into my schedule specifically for me to do my board work. And so this just goes to show you it's important to have partners not only at the state level, at the school district level, but at the school level, at the individual school level, and ensuring that administrators and school leadership understand the importance of having students actively involved. And in this case, I am able to work with my teachers because they understand that I'm a full voting member of the State Board of Education, and they understand the gravity of that role and the importance of what I'm doing. And so it makes it much easier for me to work with them as I make up assignments. But it is much easier because of my abbreviated schedule.
Yeah, that's because we had a couple of questions about timing. Are these meetings outside of the school day? So you guys definitely highlighted that. What about your social life? Like, do your friends support what you're doing? Do you talk about this in social settings, or do you have to compartmentalize it and go be a normal teenager sometimes? Just give us a little bit about how you balance that part.
I get. Oh,
No, you can go. You can go. You can.
okay, good. Um, for me, it is tough because since you're the student on the state board, and I was SGA president before. Many of the students know who I am, and they know what I'm doing, and many of them think I can just solve every single problem in the world because I'm on the school board. And so a lot of my time is spent, informing my peers about what this role is and the different authorities that it has, and the fact that I'm part of a deliberative body. I could do nothing unilaterally. And so that they understand. And it's fun too, because then you find yourself going back and educating other students. So when you empower students with the knowledge, they go back and they teach it to their other students in their communities. And so that's another point to be made as well. But I do enjoy it. But many of the students, they know about the position. But in terms of socially, yes, I still hang on to my group of friends, and we do, high school student stuff. So I still have fun, or at least I try to.
Good, 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 good. Emily, you want to add anything?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with Amari. I definitely still have kept my group of friends. Actually, whenever I found out I was gonna be able to be on this panel, um my local like 4-H office shared something on their Facebook page because
Oh.
that's kind of like how I found out about this. And
Hmm.
um one of my best friends was on Facebook and she was like, Emily Grace, like this is so cool. Like this is like a national opportunity. And she was just really excited for me. And I think like having supportive friends like that really makes all of this better. And then for example, like LIAC in March actually has like there's a name for it, but it's basically like a bring your friend meeting. And so it just shines a light on LIAC because LIAC isn't something like you really like hear about. I've heard about it because actually two of my friends that I've met through FFA that go to my school, they've been on LIAC in the past. And one girl, her name's actually Emily. She just graduated last year, and I was really close with her. And she was on LIAC, and she was like, Emily Grace, like, I think this would be perfect. Like, it's right up your alley. I think you'd really enjoy and learn a lot from it. And I have. And so just having friends that not only are similar to me and we can just like talk about the crazy things we do like this, that's really helpful. But then also having other friends who I can just share my experiences with, and they're so supportive of me. And I can still just be a normal kid with them and have fun.
Good. Well, I'm glad someone asked that question because that's important. Dr. Phillip, maybe we have time for a couple more questions before we start to wrap up. But I would love for you, this came up a little bit earlier, but I just want to make sure we close the loop. This type of student engagement is so critically important, especially given the spaces that we're in where sometimes we don't have common ground politically. What advice do you have for people managing these discussions or groups in local school districts? Anything you would share with them about the importance of authentically engaging students, especially when we're in, such politically charged times?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think one, remembering that engagement isn't something students bring or don't bring. It's how we shape the environments that allows for that to happen, and that is part of our responsibility as leaders to shape environments and where student voice can shift from those fundamental things to some actual co-design and co-agency, because we're all sort of get better solutions as we do that with young people. But I think what's powerful about co-agency is that it's not an ideological position, right? It's a human one. Across all contexts, communities want young people who are motivated and capable and contributing and going to carry on things. And that evidence, when you ask community members and you talk about engagement, is remarkably consistent. That when students feel like they belong, when they have a voice, when they see relevance in their learning, they persist. And that's not partisan or ideological, it's developmental science. And I think actually listening to students can actually lower polarization, which is a lot of us are what a lot of us are feeling across our communities for many different reasons, not necessarily just politically ones. But I think the fact that young people see things more holistically, they build coalitions across differences, they see how things integrate sometimes in ways that adults don't. That when schools model that kind of shared problem solving between adults and students, you don't have to debate that polarization. You can come together with much more common ground. So I think of co-agency as common ground about helping young people navigate, the complexities of what's happening today. And that, when we teach young people and have them experience shared power in school, they're less likely to see power as something to fight over later because we're shaping, the environment again. And I'll stop where I started this piece of the conversation, which is students don't bring or not bring engagement to the table. We help shape their opportunities to be in the middle of altering and shaping the future of learning and schooling, and they have something
Yeah.
to say.
Well, I think that is a perfect segue to my final question. And I love everybody to just go around and offer advice, which is, everybody represented on this call is, high performing, highly motivated student and great examples of student engagement. But we know that far too many students still feel disengaged and unable to lift up their voices. So what is any parting advice that you have for the folks listening in today who are thinking about how to engage students and really the ones who aren't the first ones to raise their hand? What parting advice would you offer? Dr. Young, I'm going to ask that we start with you so we give students a little time to think about it since that was a new question.
Sure. Well, a couple things come to mind, and I'll be as brief as possible. But one is courage on the part of the adults in the room. Uh, it's not easy sometimes to ask the hard question, and it's certainly not easy to hear people's thoughts on the hard question. um, there's a good deal of vulnerability and work that we have to do as the adults to have the courage to do that. So I think it starts with that kind of reflection and mindset of, is it better to ask the question and search out the answer, or is it better to kind of take the easy way? And yeah, like I think it's false to say that going down this path of co-creation and all the things that have been talked about today is necessarily easy or that it is without obstacles. I don't think that's true. I think it's definitely worthwhile though. So I think I'd really share that as my overarching advice to answer that question.
And I'll go next so that our young people can actually have the last word, since they should rightfully so be the focal point of this whole conversation. I would say a couple of things. One is putting adults and young people together in ways that allow them to listen together and learn together, that is a really good starting place. And that another good starting place is thinking about students' ability to be co-researchers with you so that you're not just surveying them to see what they think, but they are actually engaged in that research too and figuring out across adults and young people alike where issues of commonality emerge and things that you can work on together. So if you want to have good starting places, those are a couple of, good places to begin that journey
Yeah,
together.
thank you for that. Emily Omari, close us out. Parting advice for the group.
Would you like to go ahead, or would you like me to go?
You can go first.
Awesome. Yeah, for me, I would just say don't stop trying. I know it may be very difficult, especially if you're talking to a student and you just feel like they're not listening to you. But the only thing that is certain is if you stop trying, they may never get there. And so just continue to keep trying and reach out to demographics in your communities that in which they have the lowest amount of students actively involved. Part of the reason why it's so shocking for me to be in this role is because I'm the first student on the state board from Prince George's County, my county, in about 15 years, because we are an very underrepresented county. And we have a large amount of students who are they're just not engaged in civic awareness and in involvement and just knowing what is going on, and that's why it's so fun for me to be able to educate my peers. So I just say reach out to the demographics, try to find representatives from demographics and areas, locations where you have the least, because you want to find the space where, okay, you want to first ask yourself the question, who is not in the room? And then you want to go from there.
Yeah, excellent point. Emily, let's
Okay.
to
So my
close out.
advice would definitely be to start early whenever you're like talking to students. I think if you wait too long, you're kind of already going to have, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have an opinion formed whenever you start going to students, but I don't think your heart should be set on something. I think you should definitely be open to change and open to hear what the student has to say. And also, going off of what Omari said, I think the different demographics are very important because I know in like my life on the superintendent's advisory council, it's only 2 students from each school, and that's not a big number. And this is no hate because this is the charter, like this has never been done before in our parish. This is definitely new, but I think just like making it a little bit bigger, and so me and the other person on the advisory council, we're not our entire school. We don't know everything that everyone's battling. And so I think that's just another perspective. And also the comfort of the student and like you and where y'all are like talking, like, is the student going to be comfortable to share their thoughts and their opinions? And is the adult?
Wow. Well, we're a minute over time, so I'm going to wrap up quickly. But first, help me thank our amazing panelists for this fruitful discussion today. Time went by so fast. We did not get to all the questions, but I leave all of you with a few parting thoughts, which is number one. Student engagement is not a checkbox. It is central if you want to have an effective governance model in your school system. We also know that student engagement is a cross-partisan imperative. You heard the examples from the young people today. So we encourage you to implement some of these systems and structures in your district. If you enjoy discussions like this, we invite you to come back to our next session, which will be on Tuesday, February 24th at 12:45. And the topic will be from achiever to explorer. And we're going to talk about AI. I know we had a lot of questions about those that we didn't get to today. And we will be sharing some new research from the Brookings Institute. So please be on the lookout, and we hope to see you then. Thank you for being here today. And thank you to our amazing panelists for your time and expertise.